Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, we get to what kind of profile might be a good fit for the new Texas Tech DC. And Jacob Rodriguez makes an appearance in a senior day ceremony over the weekend. What's it all about?
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, man. Kicking off what has already been an adventurous week, and we're only about 24 hours into it, and what will remain an action-packed kind of week moving forward. So we'll have some thoughts now on what is a search for a new defensive coordinator, and obviously what that could lead to as far as a search for a defensive philosophy and or staff that's different from where you come from in general. We'll also get to some other things in the world of Red Raider football. I want to get to something that's been a popular question among the Matador Mobsters as far as an appearance from a non-senior Jacob Rodriguez in a senior day procession. We're reading some tea leaves on the number 10 front. And I want to get to also some general thoughts moving forward about maybe what to anticipate and how we feel about this era of the opt-out as it relates to a bowl game that is now a part of college football. But back to the coordinator search, Chris, I really just wanted to kick it off with you kind of maybe looking ahead a little bit and how you feel about what a desired kind of profile, might look like based on what you know about what Coach McGuire has maybe gone after before or some of the ways that he views defense. Are there traits, characteristics, resume bullet points that stand out to you as far as maybe what's acceptable or what could resemble some criteria, I guess?
Yeah, I think that could be all over the map of sorts, but I think ideally, because there could be exceptions to what I'll lay out here in every situation. Like, theoretically, could you look at a guy like Gary Patterson, but like an older, established guy, kind of, that's not really in it anymore? Could you look at an acting defensive coordinator somewhere? Sure. Could you look at a sitting head coach at a group of 5 school? I think all of these things are certainly at play, and it just comes down to, the finances will come into it, but it's also about, who just coaches good defense and who would have mutual interest. You don't necessarily need to go find somebody that's just going to be this ace recruiter. You've got a personnel department that'll, bear that burden for you. And, some coaches may look at that and go, oh man, so I don't really have to screw with that when I get there. Well, hell yeah. Other coaches may say, well, man, that's I want to be able to shop for the groceries, and I'm sure there's you can kind of haggle around stuff like that. Does it come down to, because you can get into everything from, do I go get somebody that's maybe I know that's tied to players that they can bring in here? Do you go, you see what I mean? But overall, I would say it won't surprise me if you end up with somebody that's got an aggressive style, okay, which is mostly what you're going to hear. I don't think you're dead set on a 4-3, a 3-4, a 4-2-5, a 3-3. I don't think that you're married to any one scheme. Having said all that, your roster is probably built for certain things and not the others, or you're going to need to go fill in some gaps if you want a certain scheme with what you don't have. But I'm interested to see kind of what they do, and I'd be willing to tell you this isn't when you get a decision like we got yesterday, and there's an announcement that Tim and Marcel Yates are not going to be retained. I mean, in Cowan, it costs you, I think I'm right here, about $1.1 million to make that decision because of what their contracts look like and the buyouts on that. It's it's 70% of 1.1 and 70% of 600,000. And so, yeah, you're looking at, a million plus to, and there's some offset language, which means they can go work elsewhere. And then that's supposed to count against what you're owed. But there's ways that schools work around that too. Hey, come work for basically free and make Texas Tech pay for it. That's just kind of how the game works and some of that stuff. But my point of bringing that up is you don't make a financial decision like this on a whim. You've probably been thinking about it. You've probably already been, checking with agents, or kind of have something already going, or kind of has some thought already prior to when the announcement's made that here's kind of what I'd like. Let's find out who's interested. Let's see what we can do. Because right now, as you saw yesterday afternoon, all kinds of things busting loose. A lot of movement out there at the Group of Five, Power Five, on and on. Purdue, West Virginia, Florida International, Florida Atlantic is obviously open. Temple hired the Sam Houston guy, so now Sam Houston is open. I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So we'll see kind of what else we get. When people are watching or listening to this, that what I just kind of stated could be theoretically outdated, and you never know what all that looks like. And then there's still more to come on other jobs, because teams are still playing this weekend and all that stuff. So
if they had any sense at all, they'd be taking notes when you're describing the right fit kind of guy, and then they would proceed forward. So no way it could be outdated, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose the guy that you described there in a lot of different ways. Thinking about somebody that's kind of long in the tooth is typically appealing to me as opposed to an up and comer, but it's Coach McGuire's decision, and obviously his view on what kind of fit he wants. So I'll be really anxious to see what that's actually going to look like. And, that's a lot of money as far as what's owed to those who are going to be out of here. But the one thing about that money, Chris, is it ain't mine. So ante up, boys. We got to get moving down the road. We're trying to win some football games. Easy to spend when it's not yours, so no problem at all. Stick with us, obviously, throughout the week, because you never know how quickly something like this could get resolved. And on the last episode, Chris, it sounded like you were describing an ASAP kind of situation. Some things don't make that feasible depending upon what, a current employer or current team a guy might be engaged with is involved with this postseason. But sooner rather than later is going to be the approach, right?
Yeah, just because of what I stated with the shopping list and filling the void on what you may need to go get. Because I would look at it, this is another way to look at it. Think about all the defensive guys in the room. I mean, what if they're all looking around going, man, I knew Coach Struder. I knew where I fit. And now my people are hearing from A, B, and C. Maybe I should get in the portal. I mean, I mean, all that is a, and you would like to hope that doesn't happen, but I mean, everybody's got to look at what's best for them. And so I think you're right. I think that timetable, you would want to operate fairly quickly. It's just not that easy sometimes, depending on who you're talking to. Let's just, like, for example, say, because I mentioned on the last episode, say there's somebody on Dan Lanning's staff, number one team in the country, and you're interested. Maybe there's mutual interest. I mean, theoretically, this individual could be coaching, and I can't imagine that they would want to walk away from a playoff run and a national title. I mean, the national title game is not until January the 20th. And you could have multiple games you're preparing for. And, like, does anybody want to entertain another job? Do they, would they be like, yeah, I'm willing to do it, but you're going to have to wait on me? I mean, I want to wait to interview. I mean, that's just a hypothetical, but it's just something to think about. And a lot of times, I mean, like I go back to your bowl game last year. Jake Spavital, who's done a phenomenal job in Waco as the offensive coordinator, especially as the season went along. He left Cal and was like, I'm not coaching the bowl game. I'm going to go ahead and move to Waco. I'm going to get things going there, and good luck, Cal. And so there's that. You also have people that take jobs and they still try to coach the team that they're with. And also, fly in for a press conference and then try to help recruit and try to put a staff together and all that kind of stuff, and while still trying to do the job that they're currently at. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how quickly, but at the end of the day, though, you just want the right person. You want the right fit. You want the right vibe guy. You want the right guy that fits with the rest of your staff. You want the right whatever that is: scheme, fit, personality, experience or aggressiveness or whatever it may be. That's really is the most important thing. But it's just the way the sport is. Everything gets pushed up, and I think that's why the quicker the better. But you just don't want to. It's like what did John Wooden used to say? Be quick, but don't hurry. That would that's probably the best way to describe kind of what you gotta get yourself situated here.
Whoever the next DC is, I got a guy that I'm hoping he has to utilize. Let's talk about Jacob Rodriguez. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle all the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can bet only $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and a whole lot more, all in one place. So when you get a hunch, a gut instinct in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a gut feeling again, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's talk about Jacob Rodriguez, Red Raider linebacker, probably the most impactful Texas Tech defensive player from this season. I don't know if there's any probably about that, but he shows up in a senior day ceremony on Saturday at Jones Stadium, Chris, and plenty of Red Raider fans take notice of this. You and I talked about his decision that he had to make last week as far as it concerns pursuing some professional interests, National Football League, more football on another level. But I think wheels get to turning, obviously, whenever you see something like that play out. And we've had guys walk multiple times, clearly. I think people are fairly familiar with this senior day routine now. If you have a decision at all, Coach McGuire wants you to go through it if you'd like, and if you don't leave, then go through it again. But either way, this is a really important guy, probably top 3, top 5 on your team if you're thinking about next year's roster. So what did you make of his appearance? And I guess I would ask, is this an NFL or Texas Tech conversation? Is it an NFL transfer portal or Texas Tech conversation? Is this an NFL transfer portal, Texas Tech, or family life conversation? It seems like there's a lot of different layers to this.
Yeah, it is. If I'm the new DC, I would prefer that Jacob Rodriguez is playing for me next year. It would make my life a lot easier. I think, because you touched on, Taj went through this ceremony last year. I think Caleb Rogers went through it last year as well. They both returned. I think that his decision, I think that, and there's some background here, but I think this is going to come down to either Texas Tech or professional opportunity. But his wife is and Joey's talked about this publicly. Some, I had him on the coach's show 2 months ago, but his wife is a Black Hawk helicopter pilot that was based in, I guess it was Alabama, I think is right. And she's transferring to a base in Kansas, to which you go, uh-oh. But I really think this is either let's go to the NFL or do I just want to get on with my life kind of thing. But from Texas Tech standpoint, you could certainly give him enough reasons to make that very difficult for him to forego this last year of eligibility, similar to what I think you can make it. You made it worth Taj Brooks's while to stay here, and it's a guarantee and all those things with NIL and whatnot. But I didn't like that he went through it. I get it. Again, he's allowed to, and he means a lot to your team. He's kind of the defense. I mean, Joey said this too. He's a defensive version of what Taj was on offense. He's kind of like the heartbeat, kind of the, and from a professional standpoint, if we can just have, an honest conversation. At the beginning of the season, he wasn't playing great. I think he's played really, really well in the last 6 to 8 weeks, but at the first, month or so, what wasn't great. And he hasn't just played a ton of linebacker, period. Okay. I think I'd be willing to bet you that his draft grade right now is probably late round or priority free agent. I think that if he comes back a year and has a similar year to what he had and kind of does some things, that he could play his way into a mid-round pick. That's me speculating. But and I go back to, and I mentioned this on the radio broadcast during the game against West Virginia, but it wasn't lost on me that last year at the end of the regular season, it's like, okay, he can play one of 2 more games and we can still maintain his red shirt. And it was important to everybody at the time, including Jacob. He didn't want to burn his year. And remember, it's like, okay, we're going to play him against UCF, but he's not going to play against Texas. That way he maintained this extra year that we are now talking about.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if he's done here yet. I think that you have reason to worry until you hear otherwise. I would also tell you that I think, like Taj's situation, I think that gets wrapped up semi-quickly. Is that 3 days? Is that 10 days? I'm not real sure what that looks like, but Taj's announcement came, in early December-ish, I think, when he kind of announced it, and then he's playing in the bowl game and like, yeah, let's go. Let's run it back. And I wonder if you'll have something similar here with Jacob, one way or the other. But yeah, I don't know, but it's a concern until it's not.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, and something to keep an eye on. Obviously, if he's a guy that's in that kind of fluid category, maybe the most prominent name to keep an eye on. So we'll file that away. As far as moving towards a bowl game and through this bowl season, Chris, what's the timeline for guys typically to be making calls on, hey, I'm playing, I'm not playing? Are there that many that you would even think of as far as guys with that kind of decision potentially to make? How are you approaching that season, which is now upon us, opt-out season?
I think that comes down to a few things. That probably comes down to bowl game opponent. Is it something like, no offense against the Independence Bowl or Cal, but I think the equivalent of that this year, and you're going to get, like last year, quite a few people going, man, I'm out. I'm not going to do that. But if it's like, if you're playing, let's just say you're playing in the Texas Bowl in Houston, and you draw A&M or you draw Oklahoma or LSU, I think you get more interest from your players going, okay, yeah, let's do it. But some may just say it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know what, like, Taj is. He would be the one I would be the most, I don't know if the right word is curious or worried about, but I doubt he plays. I don't know. I think, like, because here's the guys that I would wonder about. Josh Kelly, he's got an NFL future. Caleb Rogers has an NFL future. Taj Brooks. I'm trying to think of potentially others. Obviously we've already touched on Jacob Rodriguez.
Tight ends.
And I think your tight ends may play in this game no matter what. I have a strong suspicion that Jalen Conyers or Mason Tharp would say, dude, where are we playing? Let's go. But I don't know why I say that. That's my thought on it there. But that's a fair question to ask, because I think both Jalen Conyers and Mason Tharp would have decisions. And then this doesn't even count. Like, I mean, heck, man, you had Loic Fungi in the portal last year, and he still played for you.
That's true.
You had Miles Cole go, hey, man, I'm out. Like, see you guys. Good luck. I'm going to go train. like a Steve Linton, he just kind of disappeared. So I just think we're not real sure what this is going to look like. We won't know until this coming Sunday afternoon, when and where and versus who. And that may give you some clarity there on kind of what that looks like on who may be in or out. But yeah, these questions will start getting asked fairly quickly, and it's kind of like when the portal window opens, you're like, hey man, how quickly can you get here? But that's obviously not how it works either.
Well, they're going to have to start just dropping like air tags in everybody's wallets after the regular season finale to make sure you got an idea of where everyone is and how they're moving about the country or whatever's going on.
Because what'll happen in these bowl games, honestly, it's funny you say that, because what's going to happen in these bowl games at some point.
First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app, where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. And of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price, guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed.
What'll happen in these bowl games, honestly, it's funny you say that, because what's going to happen in these bowl games at some point, and I don't know if like the school can do it now, but eventually I think you're going to see these bowl games. They always buy them gifts and, hey, here's $500 in this store. Go spend it however you want. There's all this stuff that these bowl. I think you'll see these bowls or it'll be put in the revenue sharing agreements by the institutions. We're going to pay you to play in this game. That's what I think will.
Well, I was going to bring that up, because I would almost tell you right now, you got an NIL agreement, you need to be playing in the game. And I'm sure that will be more specifically stipulated in some years moving forward. But we're paying you to play football for us. We're playing football on this date. So you need to be playing football for us unless you're breaking a contract. So that's probably maybe vague in a lot of instances right now. But don't you think that will be one of those things that's drawn with a black and white line eventually?
Yeah, whether that's the bowl game or the school, but you could tell. I mean, you could tell. Again, playing hypothetical here, you could tell Taj Brooks, "Hey, we'll pay you $25,000 to play in the game," and he'd be like, "Yeah, I appreciate it, man, but it's just not worth it for my future. Like, I appreciate it. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but I just if my knee gets hurt, then how much money have I? So." Yeah. But I don't disagree that that will be, and whether you put in a balloon payment at the end, whether you put it in, whether the bowl games get involved, I'm not real sure what that looks like. But bowl games now are definitely spring football ahead of time, and it counts. I mean, it's televised, it counts, and you get a lot of looks at some youth on these teams, whether you want to or not. I mean, Amir Washington, prime example last year, for the Red Raiders. Yeah. So, we'll just kind of see what happens, but yeah, all is on the table at this point. You could have a lot playing, you could have a lot not playing, you could be somewhere in the middle, but you won't be alone there. Every program will deal with this at some level, and some will have a worse hand dealt to them than others will, as far as this goes. But we will know soon enough.
Have you got any games on your radar as we start to kind of whittle a list as far as interest goes?
Bowl games?
Yeah, for Tech.
Yeah, what I think is going to happen, and I'm not just this is personally, I'm not super fond of this option, but it is what it is. I'll suck it up and eat it if I have to. But what I think is going to happen is, I really think, so if you play this out, there's a lot of 8-4, 9-3 teams in your league. The only team really below you in record wise is West Virginia at 6-6. And so, you're sharing a record with Baylor and with TCU, and they have wins over you. Kansas State's got the same record. You didn't play them. I think the Arizona State, Iowa State loser will likely, if it's Iowa State, they probably go to the Alamo Bowl. If Iowa State wins that game, everybody's going to move up a notch, because Arizona State, if they don't go to the playoff, they're going to go to a Pac-12 bowl slot. Colorado is already going to go to a Pac-12 bowl slot. So when you start looking at bowl selections, you don't factor those new Pac-12 schools into the thought process as far as Big 12 bowls. But I think the way it's going to work out is that I think the Texas Bowl is probably leaning to Baylor. Then the Liberty Bowl picks, and I can see them taking a Kansas State or an Iowa State just out of proximity. And I think the Texas Bowl, Baylor has a win over you. You were just there 2 years ago. That's all working against you. And I think a lot of this points to Phoenix for you the day after Christmas, the afternoon after Christmas, which means I guess for the first time ever, I would be without my family on Christmas Eve, and all those things. That's just that's not fun to think about, but that's the job.
Come on, selectors, you're ripping a family apart, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
we got to let go, Chris.
That's right. That's right.
Let the Red Raiders. Hey, let's drop a couple plane tickets on the old fam Danley here. It's the season.
Yeah, that's right. There are, now this isn't going to be real sexy, but there are a couple of options in the Metroplex. I'd be surprised if you dropped past Phoenix on the 26th. It's the Rate Bowl. It's against a Big Ten team. I've seen Rutgers. I've seen Nebraska, which would be a great storyline. Joey coaching against his kid. And his former mentor and Matt Rule, and Nebraska would fill that thing up. It would be a road game because Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game, in a long
16,
time.
I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Just ended the nation's longest drought.
So I think Joey would probably hate that, but that is all a very real possibility. And there are a couple of games. There's one at TCU Stadium. There's one at SMU Stadium. It's the First Responders Bowl and then the Armed Forces Bowl. One of them is on the 27th. One of them is on January the 3rd. So those would be possibilities theoretically, because I don't know where TCU goes here. I don't know where I think Baylor probably, pretty heavily lean to Texas Bowl, and then, maybe the Kansas State, Iowa State, maybe the Liberty. So, yeah, we'll kind of see what all plays out, but we'll know, I guess, this coming Sunday afternoon while I'm on the air doing the Texas Tech, Texas A&M game there in Fort Worth.
We'll have a lot going on that day. And we've got to, before we get out of here, just to finally put a bow on our kind of running conversation regarding the 2024 Texas Tech football schedule, because we come into it, Chris, thinking, favorable. Conference preseason favorites, not on the list for the most part. Those in the bottom third, hello, you're here week after week after week. Now get through the early portions of the season, halfway through the season, and we're thinking, hey, is Tech's schedule not that bad after all, or maybe not that favorable? And we sit here now looking at the regular season in its totality, Chris, and you wind up facing 5 of the top 6 in front of you there in the Big 12 Conference. You beat the top 2, which is part of the roller coaster ride of this regular season. But at the end of the day, this thing turned to be a little bit more adventurous maybe than we thought coming into the year, just as far as odds are concerned. Kind of wild to think about the big swing in preseason perspectives on the Big 12 Conference and what reality turned out to be.
Yeah, and I guess the way you phrase that, there's not a bad loss, league loss, because you lost against teams that were 8-4 or better. We could still call them bad losses, but it's not like you laid an egg against some team that was, like potentially if Oklahoma State would have beaten you, no way around it. That would have been a bad loss, optics and otherwise, and all that. But yeah, this league was upside down. This year is what it was. Your BYUs and your Arizona States were finished at the bottom, and they were 2 of the best teams in this league. And I didn't think I was prepared to say that, your win over Arizona State was maybe your most impressive win. I do think I do think Arizona State will beat Iowa State in a close game. I do think that Arizona State will deal with a rowdy Iowa State road crowd there in Arlington. But Arizona State, I mean, short of a few missed field goals in Cincinnati, I mean, they just rolled through this thing. And that was after, Kenny Dillingham, got on the microphone after it was over. He's like, hey, if anybody can kick, meet me at the building on Monday morning at 6 a.m. or whatever. I'll see you there. That he would come back to apologize for saying all that. But yeah. And then, you kind of undid Iowa State a little bit, a couple weeks ago, and then they lose the next week, and then they've kind of got it back now. But yeah, you played a pretty stout schedule as we look at it. Even, you theoretically, your easiest one on paper was against Oklahoma State. Not easy at all. West Virginia is a bowl team that you beat them. So yeah, crazy. Yeah, and like you already look at it next year, you're going to play at least two schools at least that are going to have new coaches in West Virginia and UCF.
That's right.
Yeah, so
always some action in the Big 12 conference, something going on.
Yep,
upside down, inside out. Okay, I'm not going to get into the rest of the tag team lyrics, though I could. We've run out of time. Chris, enjoyed the conversation as always, man. Appreciate the insights. And, of course, we will be visiting frequently, I'm sure, as we roll through this week with so many things happening on various fronts, including a return to the hardwood. We'll get back to Texas Tech hoops at some point, I'm sure. But the fur is flying as far as the football program. We'll talk bowl odds and things like that. And, of course, keeping an eye on the search for a new defensive coordinator, and who knows on that side of things as far as the staff is concerned, how wide-reaching it could be. So appreciate the time as always, Chris, and we'll see you for the next one.
Sounds good. Guns up, and hope everybody has a wonderful Monday out there, and head on the swivel season. Be paying attention.
That's right. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. We appreciate the time, particularly those everydayers out there. Thanks for being there. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.